It's Friday, February 9. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Government Senator Matthew Samuda is calling for the resumption of hanging amid Jamaica's rising homicide rate. He made the call during his contribution to the State of the Nation debate in the Senate yesterday afternoon. Jamaica ended 2017 with more than 1,616 murders. The murder tally has continued to spiral in 2018, resulting in Prime Minister Andrew Holness declaring a state of public emergency in St. James last month. Citing crime statistics, Samuda said it was clear criminals have no regard for life and were wantonly committing murders.
However, I believe strongly that after we build airtight court cases and secure murder convictions, it's time that Jamaica in the medium term send a signal to those who brutalize our citizens, who have snuffed out the lives of thousands over the last couple decades. The state should let them know in no uncertain matter that if you unjustly take a man's life, you're going to lose yours.
Although Jamaica has retained the death penalty, it is not being carried out since February 1988. The United States Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has lauded the Jamaican government for the important progress made in combating lottery scamming and assured the country of the U.S. government's continued support the Jamaica's security forces and criminal justice system. Tillerson said he appreciated the country's close cooperation with the United States authorities to extradite suspected lotto scammers to the U.S. and welcomed the establishment of bilateral lottery scam task force.
It is in both of our countries' interest to work together to investigate crimes, share intelligence, conduct asset seizures where legally and appropriate to do so, and bolster existing anti-corruption and anti-gang programs.
He was addressing a joint press conference at the office of the Prime Minister this week following bilateral talks with Prime Minister Andrew Holness. The U.S. Secretary of State, who was on a one-day working visit to Jamaica, also noted the Jamaican government's commitment to countering narcotics trafficking and transnational criminal organizations. Legislators in the lower house passed the new road traffic bill this week, which the Senate was expected to give its nod to it today. The new bill proposes heavy penalties for a number of breaches that are committed against almost daily by motorists, particularly taxi, bus, and motorcycle drivers. According to the Road Safety Unit, last year there were reported 320 road deaths, the majority of them caused by excessive speeding, disobeying traffic signs or signals, swerving, failure to keep left, and tailgating. The unit also reported on Wednesday this week that since the start of this year, 32 people have died on the nation's roads up to that time. Some might say that the amended legislation is a long time coming. PBCJ sought to speak with members of the medical fraternity, those who treat the victims of road accidents.
My point about all these acts are irrelevant if the sanctions are not being enforced, because there are already the previous regulations which, if enforced, would reduce the number of incidents. But there seems to be either a reluctance, a fear, or corruption which prevents enforcement of these rules. And that, I think, needs to be. And as I mentioned before, I was so pleased to see that since this week, hotspots are being policed by persons at the peak hours of traffic.
I understand that there's 131 amendments. Interestingly, hand devices, including texting, is one of the penalties that I've observed.
Okay. What's your opinion on it? Are you in agreement of the new act, or do you think it needs more teeth?
I think it's quite comprehensive. Mark, I have not seen it in detail, so I cannot comment officially and comprehensively. But I think certainly it will make a significant impact once the right things are put in place.
Opposition Senator Damian Crawford is calling for Parliament to ban universities which benefit from government funding from deregistering students. Crawford says deregistering university students is counterproductive.
Mr. President, This act can only be perceived at best as unnecessary, as there is no material benefit to the institution that they can derive by deregistering a student. Mr. President, please oblige me a little time to explain this point. There are two types of costs: fixed costs, which remains constant, and variable costs, which vary per user. Mr. President, the variable cost component at university student is almost zero. The lecturer isn't paid per student. The air conditioning, the electricity costs aren't charged per student, and the maintenance cost is not a per student cost. Mr. Speaker, I beg any accountant, economist, or statistician to tell me what is the financial benefit of expelling a student from university 3 weeks before exams for non-payment of fees. Mr. President, while we can't tell private institutions what to do, any institution that benefits directly from the coffers of the government should not be capable to withdraw services from students for whom 60% of their fees have already been contributed from the government. Instead, Mr. President, we recommend withholding of exams results until satisfactory arrangements have been made. Further, Mr. President, the cost of tertiary education is a major threat to the achievement of the 1 degree per household objective. Therefore, Mr. President, I'm also making the call for a tertiary education trust that will allow for student loan repayment to be extended over 25 years.
Senator Crawford was making his contribution to the State of the Nation debate in the Upper House yesterday. He proposed an alternative to the deregistration policy, which is used at some universities. Senator Crawford is a former president of the University of the West Indies Guild of Students. The Jamaica Cancer Society is concerned about the risks associated with smoking and its impact on the health of the young people in Jamaica. This is going to be a major focus at its 8th Anti-Tobacco Youth Forum on February 22. Here's more in this report. The Jamaica Cancer Society is currently pushing for the enactment of a comprehensive tobacco control legislation, which would include the banning of tobacco advertising, promotion, as well as sponsorships. Dr. Terry Baker, a medical officer and a senior medical officer at the National Chest Hospital, took on the trending e-cigarettes.
Tobacco use is one of the main risk factors for a number of chronic diseases, including cancer, lung diseases, and cardiovascular diseases. Tobacco use accounts for approximately 80% of all lung cancer cases and is a major risk factor for cancer of the throat, stomach, kidney, pancreas, liver, and bladder. People who smoke also have an increased risk of infections like bronchitis and pneumonia.
According to Dr. Baker, nicotine, which is the addictive substance in cigarettes, is very addictive, if not more than cocaine. She also stated that cigarettes are the #1 preventable risk factor for heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and all sorts of cancers.
According to the Jamaica Global Youth Tobacco Survey conducted in 2010 by the National Council on Drug Abuse, in which 1,825 Jamaican students from grades 7 to 10 participated, as much as 40% admitted to having smoked cigarettes at one time or the other. 21% of these students admitted to being regular smokers. 45.3% of these students shared with us that they are aware of the dangers of smoking, but despite this knowledge, they still continue to smoke.
The St. James Municipal Corporation has suspended veteran People's National Party councillor for the Granville Division, Michael Troop, for 3 months for allegedly bringing the corporation into disrepute. According to the Jamaica Observer, Jamaica Labour Party councillor for the Montego Bay West Division, David Brown, gave notice of the motion last December, weeks after Councillor Troop's former personal assistant was implicated in the seizure of a shipment of 119 illegal guns and a large quantity of ammunition in Miami, United States, that was destined for Jamaica. When news broke out about the shipment, Troop reportedly said that the former personal assistant had quit her job 3 months before the seizure, but it has since been brought to the fore that the personal assistant was still being paid. The embattled councillor will not be paid by the corporation during the period of suspension, nor will he be allowed to attend meetings. In regional news, Bermuda's governor on Wednesday approved a bill reversing the right of gay couples to marry in British overseas territory, despite the Supreme Court ruling authorizing same-sex marriage last year. The decision by the governor, John Rankin, in the wealthy Atlantic island of 60,000 people, represents a rare reversal of a trend among Western countries of legalizing same-sex marriage. Under the Domestic Partnership Act 2017, already passed by Bermuda's House of Assembly and Senate, any Bermudian will be allowed to form domestic partnership, which the government says will offer equal rights. Same-sex couples who wed in recent months will not have their marital status annulled. Some critics have wondered why the UK had not moved to block the move, but speaking in Parliament on Thursday, UK Foreign Affairs Minister Harriet Baldwin said there was no basis to do so.
We are obviously disappointed about the removal of same-sex marriage in Bermuda. The Domestic Partnerships Act, to which the Governor of Bermuda assented yesterday, does ensure that Bermudians who have been legally married in Bermuda since the Supreme Court decision will retain their married status and enjoy the same legal rights as those in domestic partnerships. Less than a year ago, same-sex couples had no legal recognition at all under Bermudan law. While the Act withdraws the entitlement for same-sex couples to marry, it replaces it with a provision for domestic partnerships for all couples, regardless of gender. The intent of the Act is to provide domestic partners with the same benefits as married couples, including provision for pensions, inheritance, healthcare, tax and immigration. After full and careful consideration in regard to Bermuda's constitutional and international obligations, the Secretary of State decided that in these circumstances it would not be appropriate to use this power to block legislation, which can only be used where there is a legal or constitutional basis for doing so, and even then only in exceptional circumstances.
The lower house of the Antigua and Barbuda Parliament has passed legislation to increase the age at which a child can be held responsible for a crime. The act would see the age moved from 12. More in this report from Amar Sayers.
The Transformation Minister, the Honourable Samantha Marshall, outlined the objective of the amendment.
This amendment seeks to raise the age of criminal responsibility from age 8 years to 12 years. I note that the existing bill speaks to the age of 10 years, but we are seeking, in fact, having had discussions with the Honourable Attorney General's office, to have it move from 8 to 12 years.
Even with this change to the law, Minister Marshall noted that prosecution of a child under 14 still cannot occur unless a court deems him or her fit for trial.
However, notwithstanding the age of criminal responsibility being raised to 12 years of age, a child who is under the age of 14 years cannot be prosecuted for an offense unless the court first proves beyond reasonable doubt that the child has the capacity to withstand a criminal trial.
According to Minister Marshall, the amendment to the bill will bring the country closer to international standards.
The intention of this amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to bring Antigua and Barbuda more in line with the international recommendation that the age of criminal responsibility not be set too low so as to criminalize our children when at times they are victims of adults who incite them to commit criminal activity.
In sports, the public will soon no longer be allowed to openly watch anti-doping cases involving Jamaican athletes and local governing body, the Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission, JADCO. Since its establishment in 2008, JADCO has allowed the public to follow all cases brought before the independent disciplinary panel, but this will change within a month's time. According to JADCO's chairman, Alexander Williams, proceedings both at the panel level and the appellate level will now be done in private. He also told the press that there are mandatory preliminary sanctions and discretionary preliminary sanctions that will be taken into consideration. In cricket, Englishman Richard Pybus has made a shock return to the West Indies cricket as high-performance director just over a year after leaving the post of director of cricket. Here are the details.
In the new role, the 53-year-old will be tasked with working with Chief Selector Courtney Brown, Director of Cricket Jimmy Adams and regional coaches to improve the high-performance programs and standards within franchise cricket. Cricket West Indies said in a statement that his role will also include but will not be limited to standardizing coaching and preparation for regional teams and overseeing a talent identification program from the under-19 level all the way up to the international level.
And that's the news. Do stay with us. The weather report is next. This is PBCJ's weather report. Thanks so much for staying with us. In Kingston right now, we're seeing a temperature just about 30 degrees Celsius, and we're also seeing a forecast of rainfall this afternoon. And that forecast is set to continue on to this evening when the sun sets at 6:33 p.m. We're also seeing that the temperature is set to go down to just about 26 degrees Celsius. In our forecast in Montego Bay, St. James today, we're looking at temperatures between 25 and 29 degrees Celsius. We're also seeing a forecast of possible showers this afternoon. We're seeing cloudy conditions for the evening. The sun is set to go down at just about 6:33 p.m. in Montego Bay, St. James. In our forecast across the island today, we're expecting scattered showers across most parishes. We're also expecting temperatures between 29 and 31 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at what's expected to happen over the weekend. We're looking at temperatures between 29 and 31 degrees Celsius. We're also seeing possible showers across the island for tomorrow. In our regional forecast, we're looking at what's to be happening tomorrow. We're looking at temperatures between 30 and 33 degrees Celsius. We're seeing a temperature of 29 degrees Celsius forecast for St. George's, Grenada. We're also seeing showers across the region forecast for tomorrow and some cloudy conditions over there in Nassau, Bahamas. When we're looking at our travel planner, we're seeing a forecast for Saturday. We're seeing sunny skies for Los Angeles, rainfall for Miami, sunny skies for New York, and rainfall over there in Atlanta. We're seeing minimum temperatures between 13 and 26 degrees Celsius. Maximum temperatures reading between 27 and 34 degrees Celsius. Should be pretty warm out over there in Miami and Los Angeles. And that's it for the weather report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.